This is the new Adidas Predator Plus. The tongue is back, and in today's video I'll tell you what's good and also not so good about it to hopefully help you decide if you should buy a pair or not. And also I'll tell you about the two Elite models, which are both great and a bit rough at the same time. I'm JayMike, and this is my review of the 2024 Adidas Predators. The new Pred really mixes things up, and everything is new. Hybrid Touch 2.0 upper, new. The Outsole rubber Predator elements, well, the shape is new. There's the tongue, new. Much lower weight, new. And there's a new last, which might be the unlikely star of the show. See, it's newly developed and feels a bit more streamlined and has a really good curvature around the foot for a sleek and pleasant fit, meaning that, for me at least, it was really comfortable, but in a slightly more focused way. Because you feel how the boot sits relatively close around the foot, but for me at least, again, without any unpleasant pressure points. The heel, actually, I also found it to be pretty decent. It's not too shallow and really allows the foot and the heel to settle into it nicely. However, on the other hand, it doesn't have the strongest lock-in ever either. Now, the toe box here, as you can see, it is relatively low and pointy and thus feels rather snug and connected to the foot as well. However, because of the Hybrid Touch 2.0 package here, that sleek fit wasn't too big of a problem for me. Now, the new material here is a little bit thinner than we're used to Hybrid Touch being in the past, but it's also relatively soft in the sense that it feels pretty pliable and almost easygoing in the way that it just starts to take to the shape of your foot when you put them on. And after a couple of sessions, it starts to soften up a lot and become really pliable and just easy to wear. You know, I can wiggle my toes without any restrictions, and yet it feels as if the material has like an initial reinforcement that previous generations of the Hybrid Touch just didn't have. And I personally like the way it fits and feels, but this very thin, less padded feel compared to the previous Hybrid Touch versions might also put some players off in the beginning. And I can kind of relate to that. I mean, the lack of that padded sensation, you know, it might be divisive, but I like it. But I also want to mention how the tongue fits. See, on the inside here, you have this really soft, suede, like very plush liner that makes it feel just as if it hugs the top of your foot, giving it a really nice, almost secure feel. And basically, it feels like your foot is getting a warm hug. I'm vibing with it. It's good. Now, size-wise, it does fit on the more snug side, I would say. Now, I went true to size, as I always do, and I got this almost spray-painted on like fit, which, because of the softness of the upper, I really liked. And I actually think that the shape of the boot, alongside the Mizuno boots, is one of the best on the market for me right now. Now, width-wise, I'd also say that it will accommodate most foot shapes out there because it has decent width to it, and of course, you have the U-throw that allows for a bit more of a customizable fit. But you do need to keep in mind that the forefoot is a little bit tight because of the slimmer, more pointy toe box. So if you have a really wide forefoot or just a very chunky forefoot, or you like a little bit of wiggle room out there, you just need to keep it in mind. At least, now you know. But I also promised to talk about the Elite boots, which is basically the new name for what used to be the .1s. And here you have the Elite with the laces, which is probably going to be my go-to boots out of the three in the future, and also the Elite LL, standing for laceless. Now, the Elite boot here is basically the Plus, same tech specs, but just without the foldover tongue. And while I really like the foldover tongue from the Plus for the vibes and the feel on the ball, the shorter tongue on the Elite, it really wraps your foot nicely and it feels very sleek and nimble, albeit with a slightly less, I don't want to say powerful, but slightly less solid feel on the ball. But for me, it feels so good. Now, on the other hand here, you have the laceless version, which for my foot at least lacks some lockdown, and also somehow feels like it has a little bit more room and volume in the toe box. So depending on your foot shape, that might be a good thing. And there will definitely be people out there who will like the laceless version, but for me it just feels a little bit shoehorned in compared to the other two versions. It's a bit like an X with grip. It just... Anyway, all three boots come with the, also new by the way, straightforward Control Frame 2.0 outsole with triangular studs that just work.
It's got a pretty stiff and stable midfoot because of the torsion bars here, which feels as a solid base to move from. There's good flex in the forefoot, and I also like this little reinforcement plate under the big toe that feels ever so slightly more responsive when you push off. And of course there are the studs, which are triangular. That's always pretty versatile and feels good for most things. So honestly, it's all fairly positive.
The touch is also interesting with the new strike skin rubber fins that bring back memories of Predators of old.
See, it is a bit on the wireless side. I mean, it is a Predator after all, and it just adds a whole lot of grip on the ball. The elements here are a little bit sticky, almost on that soft, rubbery side, and because they're basically shaped as little rubber brushes, it just grabs the ball really well as you strike it and makes it feel as if, you know, adding spin, you just get a little bit extra help. And obviously it also adds that just extra something between the foot and the ball. I wouldn't necessarily say that they feel bulky because of the softness of the material, but obviously if you're looking for just a clean, pure touch, the Predator just isn't it. However, if you want that really grippy and just almost amplified sensation when you strike the ball, it just absolutely delivers. Now, as for the Hypertouch material here, it has this almost matte, flat suede-like feel to it, where there's a little bit of a haptic feel on the ball, but honestly, it's more smooth than actually grippy. So it's all about the elements. And the tongue actually also affects the touch a little bit, because in some situations, it actually goes in and cleans up your strike a little bit, and it is a very unique feeling that only the Predator has, which I find really fulfilling when you just ping those cross-field passes or low glass cutters, all that stuff. It's just a very, very nice sensation. Of course, the tongue also has these SL rubber elements to them, where, you know, it's nice to have, but I don't really know which situations I would use them to generate swerve. So, I mean, it's not exactly problematic or annoying, but here are for other things that might be. Yeah, that €20 upcharge on the Plus, where the only real change from the Elite is that it has the foldover tongue, is a bit, I mean, it's not a ton of money and it might not tip the budget for that many people, but still, it's $280 instead of $260. And that's also money. And it just feels like you really need to specifically want the tongue for it to make sense to buy this instead of the Elite. And that new shape and fit might not be for everyone. Now, I personally like it, so I don't really have a problem, but given how much more wide and roomy the accuracy was, I think the new fit and shape might come as a bit of a shock, at least to people who wore this. So, I'm good, but, you know, now you know. And then there is the lockdown. See, on the Elite laceless, I found that it was a bit brutal, because especially without grip socks, my foot was almost able to just slide right out of the boot with just a little bit of pressure applied. And obviously in a match, that's no good. You don't just want to lose your boot because you change direction. Now thankfully it is quite significantly better on the Elite and the Plus. But still here, I found that you really need to ensure that you pull the laces properly tight and snug to make sure that your foot just locks really well into the heel to get that lockdown. And maybe wear grip socks, and maybe of course also don't go full Beckham and avoid using the top lace hole because you want to pull the tongue all the way down. Don't do that. Instead, maybe consider doing the runner's loop where you lock that top part of the foot, you push it down and back into the heel. Because the lockdown is what you want to create with the laces. And this, it doesn't have any, so. And if I'm being nitpicky, and I am, I would have liked maybe a fraction more foam or cushioning on the inside of the Hypertouch upper, just to have that little extra lovely padding around the foot. To be honest, it's not an actually annoying thing per se, but just something I would personally have liked.
But all of that won't really change the fact that I like the Predator Plus and Elite a lot. Like a whole lot.
Actually, I reckon they're some of the best boots that have come out in 2023. And right off the bat, I think I struggled to think of another Predator I've enjoyed wearing more since the Adi Power. I think so. That's a long, long time ago. Now, personally, I like the Elite the best, but I also do recognize that the Plus with the tongue, it just hits all the right notes and has a really unique playing vibe to it. And of course, if you want to try the Plus or either of the Elites, you can buy them in the link to Unisport right over there. But of course also, tell me what you think of the new Preds in the comment section right down below. Remember to subscribe to the channel with the notifications on. And if you want to learn some cool new skills to do with your cool new boots, well, hit the playlist right down there. With those words, I'll be signing off. Cheerio.